Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Isyahari and I am from English Literature. Today, I will explain with you about the history of Indonesian poetry. Charlie Anwar was an Indonesian poet. His poems have been translated into English, French, and Dutch. The anniversary of his death is celebrated as National Literature Day. The history of Indonesian poetry. Poetry is the art of writing in which language is used for its authentic qualities in addition to the semantic side. Poetry is not a type of literature, but the embodiment of the human imagination, is the source of our creativity. Poetry is also an outpouring of heart, someone who would bring others into his heart. Poetry is also sometimes called the syair. Indonesian comes from the Arabic syair, meaningful feelings. Poetry just relies on words without tools. This is wherein difficulty a writer or a career poetry to convey the deepest feelings to the audience. In contrast to the music blurring lyrics and compiled in the form of songs, making the track very dynamic. Poetry tends to be static, but we shall not forget that in the history of Indonesia, Charlie Anwar makes us amazed in his poems in 1945. Trace of the poet's record is timeless. Arabic society in ancient time pre-Islamic respect someone if he has two skills. Wrestling first and second verse can be ensured if there is someone who become a champion in the field, then inevitably it will become a clan pride. Essentially, society worship Arabia at that time to things to be a paradox, strange, and softness. When Islam spread in the desert sand, the stretch of the poets was immeasured. The poet was so fascinated by the style language of the Quran, thus not longer able to create a work of poetic quality. Century later, when Islam has become an established force in the East and the West, appeared more preeminent writers. Formula Balagha became the treasured rate poetry of that era. Each culture has a tradition of poetry, whether it is in an oral tradition and written. Once you put a time, getting the better of a culture of quality poetry produced. Similarly, Indonesia's history has Chairil Anwar, Hamka, Habib Jassin, Sitor Sitomorang, Taufik Ismail to W.S. Renda, even so Hokgi create a poem in his era. Speaking in the present context, we can say we are very short of the literary master who produce high quality poetry. What is the cause? Life is the law of cause and effect. If we look from the start of principal events could be existing system lead to a brilliant surface. But there can be also our society no longer properly appreciate a poem in the modern era mindset. In the modern era mindset, people have been contaminated with the materials that makes life drier. The art of being tasteless and a poem to be dry. Every era has its phenomenon. Each proud period has its problem, but there is always the same like romance. The love story is something timeless era swallowed. From the days of Adam and Eve until now, he has never run a story or reading material. He riddled anyone life that is seduced by the charm of his able may ask anyone it is a pleasure to live the dream of every human child that he ignored, denied, or even trampled. But it's something more thrilling than romance. Perhaps each person has a different answer depending on the background and character of person. If you were to ask someone Muhammad Hatta before 1945, he would answer independence. It could be a hard expression of someone who had sworn never to marry. Before Indonesia, the independent, if you ask a Tan Malaka, a person whose life is more powerful than fiction, maybe he will answer adventure by reaching independent. The people of Bukit Tinggi navigate the world with broad horizons to set foot on the Manila to Russia. Everyone should have the right to design, however, what it all means if we are not able to embody in story full of feeling in a poem. In a poem contained the wisdom of life, the philosophy of stoicism, and understand the pain and joy. Poetry and science are two opposite but actually complementary. Omar Khayyam, an eminent astronomer of his day, is now more famous as a writer since the trail he left behind. Poetry, his softens the heart. In poetry there are hidden forces he made come complacently, but he also has the ability to burn spirit. We must not lose its meaning. I think that's enough. Thank you for your opportunity, and I think that's all my presentation. And assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.